Pleased to have on the line with us Marcy Wheeler. She's an independent journalist specializing in national security and civil liberties. The website emptywheel.net. You can tweet her at emptywheel. Marcy, welcome back to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So tell me why metadata surveillance has failed France. What's the story here?
Since the attack, everyone's been saying, encryption surely prevented us from learning about the attack ahead of time. We're learning that's not true, that the attackers used unencrypted phones and had been wiretapped by Belgian authorities. But the other thing that's true is that even before you get to encryption, part of the system that the NSA uses especially, but France surely uses similar approach, part of the system is to collect all of this metadata from communications and using that metadata identify what the most important communications would be. And even if those communications are encrypted, the NSA has ways around that. So if the NSA finds stuff that they think is going to be particularly interesting, they're going to go hack a phone, or they're going to go hack the way in which somebody interacts with the internet. And in fact, it looks like the Dragnet worked to some extent. Just as an example, I just read that one of the leaders of the plot switched his phone 5 times. And that's one of the things that the Dragnet is designed to do, is to be able to track when somebody picks up a new phone. And so that would have his attempts to thwart surveillance would have failed because of that. But ultimately, something happened that authorities in France and Belgium weren't watching closely. And when people automatically assume that encryption is what led us to fail to thwart this, what they're really saying is that the metadata program didn't prove that these communications were valuable enough to decrypt or to translate.
To break this down into English for people who don't know what metadata is or encryption is, basically, encryption is encoding your messages so that they're very difficult for spy agencies to read, or anybody to read, for that matter.
Well, anybody to read, because you and I use encryption all the time when we go use an ATM machine. We use encryption all the time online. The only area where we have confirmed that the attackers used encryption is that one of them made a hotel reservation with his own credit card and his own name, but doing that online generally involves a form of encryption to ensure that nobody kind of jumps into your transactions online and steals your credit card.
Secure socket language, SSL, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the only encryption that we know that they've used. They've used a lot of other counter-surveillance measures, but that's it. They've also, by the way, used dialects that they found hard to translate. Right.
Now, the metadata is who called whom, when, and how long they talked, but it's not the actual conversations.
Right.
Or who corresponded with whom. And the reason why this is consequential right now is that Section 215 of the Patriot Act, which allows for the mass collection of metadata, has been altered so that data is still going to be collected, but it's not going to be held by the federal government. I guess it's going to be held by the private corporations.
Well, they already hold it.
Okay.
I mean, what listeners should know is, one, their metadata is still going to be collected in bulk if they call overseas, because that's not collected domestically. Right. Their metadata, their internet metadata, is still going to be collected because they can do that overseas. So they're still being bulk collected on. Everyone listening to this, 2 weeks from now, when this program expires, you're still going to be bulk collected by the NSA. I'm sorry to inform you. What will change is that the domestic records will, as they are now, will be held by the phone companies. And if the NSA and FBI want them, whereas now when the FBI goes to the phone company, mostly they can only get who you called, they'll be able to get who you called and who they called, and a bunch more metadata.
Right. Build a tree.
And then it'll get dumped into NSA's giant maw, and some more analysis will happen to it. And by the way, the FBI director very recently testified to Congress that he expects to get more data once the program transitions in 2 weeks than under the current under the current rule. And that's because they're going to be getting more cell phone data. They're going to be getting more VoIP data. They're going to be getting a lot more texting data. So, in fact, what the NSA and FBI will be getting in 2 weeks is better for them. It just means they won't have everything in a server somewhere that they can access,
in one nice, neat little package. Yeah.
Right.
So we're talking with Marcy Wheeler, emptywheel.net, at emptywheel. Marcy, these guys came out a couple of days ago after they shot up Paris and said, we're coming to Washington, D.C. next. Now, I'm sitting here in Washington, D.C. That doesn't make me real happy. I'm not, frankly, all that terrified, even though I'm 5 blocks from the White House. But it seems like there is an appropriate level of, spying, of keeping our country safe, of keeping all of us safe. Where do you think that we should be drawing the lines? What are the mistakes that we're making? What are we doing that we shouldn't be doing? What are we not doing that we should be doing?
Well, it is my impression that the NSA spends far more effort collecting it all and less effort on analysis. And less, just as an example, I kind of already briefly said, but there are initial reports coming out that the terrorists in Paris also used a Moroccan dialect that proved difficult for Belgian wiretappers to understand, and also Arabic. And we know that the NSA doesn't have enough Arabic translators. They probably have even fewer Moroccan translators that would know the dialect in question. And so we need more investment in that, so that if there is because that Moroccan dialect is going to work exactly the same as encryption.
Right.
Because the NSA is going to have
look at what the Apaches did to the Japanese.
That's precisely, yeah, that's exactly right. And so that's sort of what these terrorists did to the Belgian authorities, and that provides you the same kind of obscurity that encryption will. And so we need to bump up those areas as well, the translation and the analysis side. I think that the collect it all, it does, I think, you'll see people on both sides of this argument, but if the haystack is too big, you're spending too much time juggling with the haystack. And I think, the NSA time after time says, hey, let's go collect all of this.
Right.
Another report that's come out this week is that terrorists are increasingly using PlayStation 4s to communicate. And that's not encrypted, but what's likely is that metadata is not collected. And so It may be that the NSA needs to be more nimble to be able to go to Sony and say, give us the metadata, and find a way to work to manage that metadata, rather than saying, I'm going to collect everything that passes the European continent.
Right. We just have a minute left before the break. Is this an example of, we kind of fell in love with technology, or big technology companies gave us a big sales pitch and said, we'll do it for you, just give us a couple $100 billion, when in fact we should have been just investing in good old-fashioned human intelligence, the old spy thing?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And the other thing is that it's one thing for Target to use big data to figure out who's pregnant, right, which is the classic case of being able to predict something. Terrorists are a lot more nimble than pregnant ladies. And so it's a lot harder to develop rules about what they look like from their communications that will be robust over time. And so I think that there's a faith in big data applied to a small group of ever-moving targets that is misplaced.
Right. Fascinating stuff. Marcy Wheeler, you're doing great work. Independent journalist specializing in national security and civil liberties. Emptywheel.net is her website. Twitter, you can tweet her at emptywheel. Marcy, thanks so much for dropping by today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Great talking. To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.